Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who had no children.
Oh, I long for a little daughter more than anything in this world.
Do not worry. We will have a beautiful daughter.
One day, when the queen was bathing in the cool water of the palace fountain, a frog suddenly jumped out and sat at the edge, gazing at her.
You shall have your wish this very time next year, when the briar rose begins to flower. A living rosebud shall blossom for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And the next year, just at the time of the roses, the queen had a little baby daughter, just as the frog had promised.
Oh, our daughter is very beautiful. My joy knows no bounds.
We have to give a name for our daughter, so please make arrangements.
Of course, I will make the grandest christening possible and invite all the fairies.
The day arrived. The palace was filled with guests. The king and the queen received the guests and honored them. The king had invited only 12 fairies. Unfortunately, he forgot to invite the last fairy. The 12 fairies came to the christening ceremony, and they each brought a magic gift to the infant princess.
I will give you the beauty. I will give you health and happiness. Cleverness is my gift. Sweet temper and a kind-hearted princess you will be.
One by one, all the fairies blessed the child. The 12th fairy was about to bless when the 13th fairy, who had not been invited, arrived. She looked at the sleeping princess.
Oh, princess, you shall have my gift, though I was not invited for the christening.
Oh, fairy, please forgive me. I really...
No explanations. When you're 15 years old, you shall break your finger with a spindle and fall down dead.
She flew out of the window. Everyone stood quite silent with grief and horror, until the 12th fairy stepped forward and waved her wand.
I have still a gift to bestow, and though I cannot change wicked fairies' prophecy, I can at least make it less evil. The princess shall not die when she breaks her finger with a spindle, but she shall fall into a deep sleep, which will last 100 years, and along with her, everyone in this palace too will fall asleep.
Oh, thank you so much.
Then all the fairies left the palace.
What will we do now? Please do something. We have to save our only child.
Do not worry. The only way to save our child is I will order that every spinning wheel in the kingdom should be destroyed.
The king's order reached every nook and corner of the kingdom. Everyone who owned the spindle brought it to a public place and burnt down the whole lot. And very soon, not a spindle was to be found throughout the length and breadth of the land. Years passed. The child grew to be a beautiful princess. She was as beautiful as a flower, and as clever as she was good, and as happy as the day was long. Since the spinning wheel was banned, everyone, including the king and queen, wore only rags. It happened that on her 15th birthday, the king and queen went out together.
left alone in the palace and feeling bored. Let me go through all the rooms in the palace and look for adventures.
After a while, she came to the end of the palace, where there was a little stair.
How come I have never noticed this earlier? Let me climb to the top.
On the top, she saw a curious little door.
Let me knock the door and see who is inside.
The princess knocked, and an old, cracked voice cried out.
Come in.
And when the princess opened the door, she saw a little old woman sitting there with a spinning wheel, spinning soft white yarn.
Oh, what a funny thing that is. I had never seen such a thing before. I would love to make it go whirling round and round. Oh, can I have a try?
Oh, sure, why not? Come here.
The princess put out her hand to touch the soft wool, but the spindle pricked her finger and a tiny drop of blood sprang out. Before she had even time to cry out, part of the fairy's evil prophecy came true, for she sank down on the stone bench and fell fast asleep. At that very moment, everybody and everything in the palace stopped what they were doing and fell fast asleep too. The king and queen, who had just returned and were walking through the hall, sank down in 2 royal chairs. And as the years went by, people began to forget about the palace. The palace was covered with a hedge so thick and so high that no one could see what was inside. A prince arrived at the kingdom on the very day when the princess had been asleep for 100 years. He heard the story about the sleeping princess.
The last prince came back quite blind. The thorns in the hedge will tear you to pieces.
I shall never come back at all, unless I can win my way through.
The prince set off bravely, but when he got to the great hedge, to his surprise, he found it covered with pale pink roses, and the branches parted in front of him to make a passage, and all the thorns looked the other way. He saw the horse with the corn in the mouth, pigeons sleeping with widespread wings.
Oh my God, even the king and queen are fast asleep. Let me check all the rooms.
The prince, who was wondering, saw the little stairs and climbed up it.
Let me go inside.
He opened the door and stepped inside, but stood still in wonder and delight. The princess lay there fast asleep, her fair face turned towards him, just as she had sunk down to rest 100 years ago.
Oh, what a beauty! I have never seen such a beautiful girl. I wish to marry her.
The prince slowly touched her hand. The moment he touched her hand, a miracle happened. The prince was wonderstruck. The princess's eyelids quivered, and the next moment, her eyes opened. She looked up and saw the prince, and when their eyes met, she gave a little cry of joy.
Oh, you have come at last. I have been dreaming and dreaming of you, and I thought you were never coming to wake me.
Now, the moment the princess opened her eyes, everyone and everything in the palace began to wake too. Both the prince and the princess went to see the king and queen.
I am so happy, for your curse has come to an end.
Let's make preparation for their marriage, and this time, please invite all the fairies without forgetting anyone.
You are right.
And so they were married and lived